worldly concerns. Saviour, we sincerely rejoice in your extensive deeds. Perfect, pure, holy gurus from the billowing clouds of wisdom and compassion in the sky of Dharmakaya, please let fall a rain of profound and extensive Dharma upon the receptacle of those to be subdued, exactly as they need. May whatever virtue I have collected benefit the teachings and all transmigratory beings, and in particular may it cause the essence of perfect pure Losang Drapa's teachings to shine forever. Saji Poki Jushimeto Tramri Rablingshi Nihide Kempadi Sange Shindu Meteowa Yidro Kunamda Jila Chopasho. By the merits of having offered this mandala to Lama Tsongkhapa and his two sons, may I, my family members, and all sentient beings be able to meet, practice, and actualize the teachings of the victorious one, Losang Drapa, who had the morality of an eminently pure way of life, was courageous in the extensive conduct of the sons of the victorious ones, and accomplished the yoga of the two stages to supreme bliss and emptiness. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kapnayatayami. And the visualization, by the force of having fervently requested in this way, hollow beams of white light are emitted from the hearts of perfect pure father and sons, and combining into one, enter my crown. White nectar, the color of milk, flows from the opening of the tube of white light, cleansing all my sicknesses, spirit harms, negative karmas, obscurations, and their imprints without exception. My body becomes as pure and clear as crystal. So I recite the Metsema 5-line prayer 3 times. Me me te we te te ten re si dream me kempa wampa jampaya to puma lu jan san sawa dan gan chen ke ben sun gan son kapa Losang Drapa shabla suwa de. Me me te we te te ten re si dream me kempa wampa jampaya to puma lu jan san sawa dan gan chen ke ben sun gan son kapa Losang Drapa shabla suwa de. Me me te we te te chen re si dream me kempa wampa jampaya to puma lu jan san sawa dan gan chen ke ben sun gan son kapa Losang Drapa shabla suwa de.
Sangi Chedang Tsogin Chonum La Changche Pardu Dani Kyabsun Dagi Chushi Yevanda Dagi Roland Benshi Sangin Drupara Sho Sangi Chedang Tsogin Chonum La Changche Pardu Dani Kyabsun Dagi Chushi Yevanda Dagi Roland Benshi Sangin Drupara Sho Sangi Chedang Tsogin Chonum La Changche Pardu Dani Kyabsun Chi Dagi Chushi Yevanda Dagi Roland Benshi Sangin Drupara Sho Kanki Tuzi Nizomni Tawa Tamche Bambi Cher Tambi Chun Tenzi Kwadam Tela Changse Lo Namu Laye Kedan Lodan Nojenke Tripon Dada Mi Kenam Dang Ro Kunji Ranam Chizum Tamche Kedu Dagi Chuden To. Good morning, everyone. Trustele Darjala. Nganzu Kazi Nganzu Lang Tambala Demba Yins Gaurambuchi Gabji Lama Sobarambuchi Ye 뉴션 손데 자바인자
Go on. Nusin?
뉴춘
Yuchin.
양시 뉴춘 손데
The Yuchin Songdep. Sildep Kosong. And Yuchin Kosong.
예, 아니. 안디 자바름지 자바인자 강강주 된고 그러왔어. 먼저 가든 좀 봐이네요. 먼저 가든 루루잖아요. 다디 된지 먼저 라마소버름 지게 양시티 격보 펩토야 뭐는 자고 그래서
Good morning, everyone. So, we've received a supplication, a prayer composed by His Holiness for in relation to Lama Zopa passing from this world, and this supplication for his quick return is something that is important for us to recite, so as to create the causes for his reincarnation, for Lama Zopa's reincarnation to quickly arise in this world again.
데리딘자 이 가르섬스는 간주 추시야 진짜 가두촌이야 아니 고텔이야 토마텔이야 간주 손뎁티 겨 아니 루무치기 양시 교보패야게 체도 아니 간주 최친인지야 된번도야 말람자야 사물로 아니 대간지 쪼 간주 루무치기 양시 춤에 야부치 이 용국으로서 안디체동안 아니 라므르시야 곰자야 덴번테야 그런 딘디질이야 키투와노 야부도 쓰라.
My thought is that after every teaching, every Dharma event, then it's good when we, as part of the section where we recite dedication prayers, we also recite the supplication for Rinpoche's reincarnation to quickly return. And when we do so, then I encourage you to do so with an aspiration, a sincere aspiration that his unmistaken reincarnation quickly returns, is recognized, and we reconnect with him. So this is my thoughts on how we should make use of this prayer composed by His Holiness.
인지도라 US.
Yeah, consigliere.
데리 담을 벽에 돌이 직전된다 쓰라.
So Geshe is asking, do you have it with you now in English or not? Because I'll recite it in Tibetan.
데리 제만 산인이ችን.
Kung holle hier kontante di
Yeah. Dame temba jase nyerang zo losan jawa yapsi gyubaraji ramjam shingi javyo malube tender memban dribi gele zor yonsu zobi tubden rumbochi shedan dribi zinjin bewala namyam mishum zobi koshaji tsome jizun lamar sowande Pende malun jongwe gorjigo Gyawe dendang majurun rawaye Tenla chigdu zomban zebe gur Lowre shewara shende yigre pan Wendang chosum gyamzu chenlawa dang Gyase namji tukje laboche Lume denbe yangzhi sabin zum Kezan doji perdu 뉴시 쇼 아니 칸둘라 직 송여레스 뒤에 먼저 직 드립된 곳으로 이 말이 야 그래 이백이 또 지금서 이 땡기 슬라브션을 직설.
And it's also good if we recite the supplication that was also written by Kandrila. So now I will also recite that in Tibetan. And if you have it in front of you in English, you can read that too. But most importantly is to have the sincere wish that his unmistaken reincarnation quickly takes rebirth in our lives, and merit that is being created dedicates to this.
To page 9, Guru, think of me. Guru, consider me. Gracious Guru, care for me. Root Guru, most gracious and kind, do not deprive us of your compassionate refuge. Listen and consider this heartfelt prayer made by a tormented disciple. Guru, you embody the blessings of the Buddhas of the 3 times. May you rest in great bliss, equipoised within the dhatu of unimpeded luminosity. Yet the playful dance of your loving compassion can emanate in myriad ways. The swift appearance of your magical wisdom, the Rupakaya. The time has come for you to care for us once again with your affectionate compassion. I invoke you, I call upon you, I implore you on behalf of all beings. Arise, arise, arise from the Dharmakaya. Do not rest in Kachara or other pure celestial realms. Rather, to benefit the Buddha's teachings and all living beings, swiftly return to this southern continent to spread the Buddha Dharma of study and realization. Quickly return to guide us, poor wretched beings, such is the desperate cry of us, your disciples. Return so that we may actually behold your presence and receive the blessings of your enlightened body, speech, and mind. All violations, errors, mistakes, and broken samaya that we have made in relation to your spontaneously present awakened body, speech, and mind and activity, through our being baffled, confused, and conceiving things in erroneous ways, we confess within the luminous emptiness of your 3 kayas. Of everything auspicious, the supreme auspiciousness, may there be the auspiciousness of emptiness and compassion, conjoined, and the auspiciousness of a timely meeting between master and disciples. Through the force of the truth of unchanging suchness, may the unmistaken incarnation return quickly. This lament was made by me, a Dakini with pure faith, and Samaya, her eyes filled with tears of sorrow. May these wishes of a beggar woman be fulfilled through the blessings of the deities of the 3 roots. Perception, its root, and the act of perceiving all dissolve within the expanse, the bliss, clarity of suchness. Ah.
Gavram chigi song shabati and Tundu Mandamandas, right? Tundu Mambu Mandas, Tundu Mado, Tinzanganzu Ngatola Simtuna Yabudos, Ngala, Lola Simna, Yabudos, and in Rumachigi Jema. Don't try doing Shabu Shegu Nimotella, and the mixing charge figures. Tuding on some log. So the Lama Sovereignty Pigita, get doing in Sungone, Susuge, Natolia, Susuki, Sunayabudos.
The prayer that His Holiness composed for Rinpoche's swift return. It's very short, it's just a few verses. So I would encourage you to memorize it. I certainly am going to. And when we gather after the 49-day period, the 7-week period, to do a big puja for Rinpoche, then it would be quite wonderful if we were all able to recite this together. And it's fine to memorize it in English.
Tenda chidan kazing among each shoot is Manzu Kazin in the Niba Sumbalea, Yagaladro, Amazorumachin, songs, and in Kong Taji Kong Shikan Yabati, Tanganzula Sibu Chin Song Yoras. And in this similar Shani, and Tanda Rumachishu Yomarawas, and Ganzuhoda Badachin. Maranzu so lenging karim but and Ganzu Kanji Rumichi Kumbanashi in the Drugoyadi Bemasiva Kitchen Burawas Rumichi Gombi to carry over thing on to Drugoyadi 개침부로 왔어.
Back in February and March, I went to India and was fortunate enough to meet His Holiness and Rinpoche. And whilst I was in India, of course, Rinpoche was still in this world. So we don't know what our karma is. We don't know what is going to happen. But what is of great importance is to fulfill the wishes of our holy teachers, such as Rinpoche. This is something of great importance.
Dinza, the Nanzu Rumuchilaya, the Zula Kanshaya, Korshuris, Zula Kan Kombakaya, Rumuchi Pemasivatene, two new chansons,
Tugnimpa.
two new and Gao chansons. Shesa Machina Gao Segra, Shesa Jan, two new chansons. Two new chansons.
And Tuga Kansena di Daram Salem and a copa.
And the Jerusalem, Zula Kansawa Shaya, Gombagaya, Kortishura.
When I met Rinpoche, I discussed the possibility of building a new temple here at Chenrezig Institute. And when he heard about this plan, he showed immense joy at this idea.
Tangi di shugo kanisna kazin sanyima dilanga lang tambalan drawings. Ani lang tambalan draw di amajiki ngalaya pebe pechanti amajiki ngala tresons. Ani to do pejadi sendilaya power trashits over shishi tebachim do set. And I'll dem do be and sini ya dendrishiwings shala.
Last Sunday, when I went to Langri Tampa in Brisbane, a woman gave a Tibetan text to me. Geshe was just showing it. And this text title is the Mahayana Sutra of Heaps of Arya Good Fortune. So she offered this to me, and I brought it home to look at it, to read it.
Tadingi dirin share zo karinsana ani dodi sanji chomden digi song res. Sanji chomden digi power trashibi sigbi tebachimin do song tsawi jela ani chomden digi getu pawan jambel kanji jizun jambi yangi yala ani chomden dili ya karishu dos la dindi do koran alam dos ani chomden dili tan di kariche go res kariche do ndengo res Geshe Tishas, ra. Beyam sembundos, ra.
So I want to discuss the sutra a little bit with you today, because this sutra, being a text, being a sutra means it is the actual speech of the Buddha. So when the Buddha gave this teaching on the Mahayana Sutra of Heaps of Arya Good Fortune, afterwards, after given the teaching, then one of his principal students, Manjushri, the Arya Manjushri, asked questions. So those questions and the replies are also included within the sutra. Questions on what should be done, what should be learned.
Teni dere tisi chomden de la pawan jambar shonu kebyu sowas. Ani chomden di karson dos laundi. Konjo ki podang singbatans. Konjo ki podang sina da pen ana konjo ki podang sina pen tsawi lama ge shuksha tsawi lama ge shuksa kamba kya dang. Lakang singbatang. Zula kang singbatang. Choden singbala sobi chedu. Ani ndodin dengo gres.
Lakang gere lama ki shuksa gere deni sumpa chiksungsung.
Zulakang gomba.
De sum ha?
Choden. Choden chimbu shangbaina.
De gosa. Zagi sige deni drampa kobo jogi ha? So in this sutra, which in the sutra, Buddha Shakyamuni says quite clearly how important it is to build a temple or build temples containing or on the ground having stupas, also having residence for the Lama, as well as a temple with great statues in it.
Terdadi Sanji Chomden Digi Kerang Zulakan Gomba Jagin Bana Trash Sigbin Dot Dongo Grace. Kerang Kunjogo Pora Benangazu Zulakan Tokalaya Lama Sobermuchi Simsha Jayag Chashores. The Kunjogo Poran said Dilagores. And then Hakansana Manzu Choishan of Kunda Chimbuchi Zulakanash. Since that Dil Hakares. 다 간지 디체도 아니 파워 트래시 지금 돈 되고 그래서 좀 된디 그런 거 송요래서.
My receiving of the sutra I see as really auspicious because in the sutra Buddha Shakyamuni himself said that in order to build a large temple which has the residence for the Lama at the top, such as Lama Zopa, then the large temple with great statues, in order to create the causes for this sutra should be recited. So hence I see it as so auspicious.
Tinza dirida dikhanzogi 인지나 세는 인지나 요레스티 인지 돌아야 도와줘 통서.
Does anyone know, has the sutra been translated into English? The title is, these titles can be expressed in different ways, but it's something like the Mahayana Sutra of Heaps of Arya Good Fortune. Because the Nigmalama kum do mampo yigu jeso, deni kun chindak jeso. Chikchana.
Yeah.
Yeah, they love some.
인지도라는 캐런즈 딘도드마 도트 쇼그만부 요마르 디만산 타들라 아니 인터넷이 저틀린디어레스 법원 잠백이야 좀 nen들티 좀 nen데가 말레 나온디 아니 저가디 티체는 연구 그래서 디세우ችን 송요레스 딘상한주 뒤틀려야 그냥 아는 로인나다 가진 라발라 라와니 진네 된디기스 아 간선나 안주라 간 샹고거래 디치디 좀 된데 랑기 송바인사 로데부 벤도스 호다바는 된구였으라.
So if you can download the sutra, this would be good to do because it's a short sutra, it's not a particularly lengthy one. And you'll see in here the interaction, the conversation, the question and answer between Manjushri and Buddha Shakyamuni. And really from my side, having the sutra now brings me great joy because it seems so auspicious that right now at this time, when I have this deep desire to build this temple, and this was brought such joy to Rinpoche's mind too, to receive this sutra wherein Buddha Shakyamuni says this sutra itself is to be recited in order to create the auspicious causes for a temple to be constructed. The word three isn't in the Tibetan, but the heaps is there and the superior is there. So possibly not, but not the three. Yeah, because the word heaps is there, and there's heaps or stacks or piles. So one thing piled on top of the other, that's one word. Write it in English or the Tibetan script? It will be, yeah, that's at the end. So Pakpa is the first. Pak, P-H-A-G. Tashi, as in Tashi Dele. And then Tsek, T-S-E-G, T-S-E-G. And then Tekpa, T-H-E-G-P-A. Chenpo, Chenpo, and then Sutra Do, Do. Okay. And Chikjana Konso Shimpa Drapo Raksong, then it's Helgi.
Any anja di yam samachila tanda any chapta shembachila any Leben Pemanjon Gurumbuchik, Pema Sambawak, Sonchigiores, Tinamala.
Then within this collection of sutra that I received, there is also
Leben Pemanjoni, Gurumbuchi, Pema Sambawa.
Then within that, there is a teaching from Guru Rinpoche as well. It seems to be a collection of teachings. Complete lotus collection of teachings, something like this.
And the tip be Yahuyaresra. Gomba Sava Shandi, Gomba Shansa Sajadi. Chinlab Chigores, Chingilab Gores.
And why this is for me so really auspicious to come across is that the purpose of this teaching from Guru Rinpoche is it is to be recited when one builds to bless the land when one builds a new monastery or a new temple. So again, it seems very auspicious.
Guru Rinpoche Tirup Gobare Gobachuba Pele Pera. Tirup Gobachubalaya Pele Pep Pelaya Samir Zula Kanse Gomba di Shambares. Gomba di Shambi Kabdula Ani Saja di Chingi Lavra. Ani Kongi Peg Gabo Trison Denze Yam the Geshe Chen Chingi Labdan Diniris and the Sonsha Yutin Dindina Yores.
And again, why this is so remarkable to have is when Guru Rinpoche went from ancient India to Tibet, he had a conversation with the Dharma King Trisong Detsen, and this sutra or this text was recited to bless the land where they built the famous Samya monastery, the first monastery in Tibet. So this too really shows the auspiciousness of what I received last week.
Australia Lamalaya, Pebe Gombati, Toma the Shandi, Saja Chingi Kandas Love Guru, Gurumuchi Son Shaguti, Nalarayores.
So now I've received the instructions from Guru Rinpoche on how to bless the land to build the greatest Tibetan monastery in Australia.
Tinzangadi Bemaswa any Temdi our chansons, the Amadi and Pejadi Korkaya Hakogo Mares. I think Morangal detailing one and the main Moshivaji details on Kishla can go US. And I count Taran, the summer, the Kanjing Anzula Goya summer, Anzula can shine Shabden Karichi Gogre, such a chingy country love Gogre, the summer dinner yours, Tinjing all rasons, raw. Dilamos over Magic Chilavres. Dordina.
Now you can understand why I see this offering I received as so auspicious, because the woman who offered it to me, she has no idea what's in there. She offered it to me and said, if you want it, you can have it. And now we see just how auspicious it is, how timely it is. And how do I interpret this auspiciousness? Honestly, I see it as the blessing of Rinpoche, because this is too his heart wish. So I see this sutra coming to me as a blessing from Rinpoche.
And big gauchons, one in the pay of those Rakaji, big going on big gauchons.
Again, let's just if I add a little bit from my side, he's struggling to express the joy that receiving this auspicious text brings to him.
디 디트디 그 판다로데 안에 대천다 안에 어머니가 요레스 딜라나 타면 간도 냠데 아마딩가 트레송스
So when Genlo received it, he was with some of the venerables here.
데르다 당연히 사 지단사 바산 차진이야 안에 람람 ngotre 체되게 요레 자유 간절이야 참지기 요레스 다이네 규름부시고 진저wen자 아니 간저 대린 참 코랑 돈에 아니 담무고 제 것으로
참랍나 네던디?
참라나 가리 참 가징이만 반참 샤야줘라
Then it goes on.
Yeah.
So our Friday class, as of course you know, you're here, is is a teaching on the Lamrim. But it's been a while since we've had the teachings on the Lamrim. There's been quite a break of a number of months between this class and then our last class last year.
대들이 단지 공도 담보 내가 껴대야지 강기 투진 예수네 따와 탐지 밤비처 담비처는 된제바 고담 때라 창zel로스 고물로 주고 손대야 되다 달람람 수 도도진 시바나 안 디나만 누고레스 여름식 딱바 뒤숭고도 왔으라
Ni komboludrup kishung kenende sung primbe kishung giten. When His Holiness teaches, he always recites a particular verse from Nagarjuna's fundamental wisdom. The 4-line verse goes, the 4-line verse is, I prostrate to Gautama, who out of compassion taught the sacred Dharma that leads to the relinquishing of all views.
툭 세워 침비기 아니 두잔남 나야 시비토네 아니 두시 규기 아니 뉴몽게 따와 마리발라 소바 따와테 탐제 아니 빵비처도 아니 산지 좀 된데게 취tem바레스 취땡인게 산지 tel야다 차세기스
Okay, manchira goso, thematic, yanka, then no traumade.
Dujala, 7 hinji chamber, wangi, duji, gugi, numu nanga, so the tower mariwala soba, pambi shelter, and sanji chom den dig, dujala, chut embares.
I'll read the verse again. I prostrate to Gautama, who out of compassion taught the sacred Dharma that leads to the relinquishing of all views. So Buddha Shakyamuni, Gautama, out of great compassion, he taught that all our afflictions that cause so much pain and suffering, they have as their very root ignorance.
Terda chadang nyumu pambicherto Chutembares Lavna Digta Digoros in a di Mahimba Tawa Pambicherto Chutembares said a Mixig Gobayosares Gobayores Numu Pambichet Chutembares Malava Tawa Pambichet Chutembares said Mixig Gobayores.
So in general, to abandon the afflictions, one does need to rely on the Dharma, but to abandon views, so the 4th line of the verse, that leads to the relinquishing of all views. To abandon views, one necessarily must rely on the Dharma.
Nyumu penantanganzugi sanji tachu ten gobatsu di dujanam dungali trobichet kanji tsu dungali trobatan ani tendu deva tobicherdu chu sunguyori 주 냠내 지기어라스.
Afflictions such as attachment are what lead to our suffering. But what we long for is lasting, stable happiness. And in order to attain happiness that's free of afflictions, we need to understand the Dharma and practice the Dharma, integrate the Dharma.
Tiza ta dunghar pangbala dunghar ngontre kogoras. Dunghar ngontre bala dunga khal ten yungdu. Arwa ani dunghar ki tsawati. Ta dunghar ki tsawa delaya le da nyumu ni yungures. Ani le da nyumu ni. Nyumu la ya tawa tang tawa mayimba ni yungures. Ti nangi tawa dige tawa mayimbi nyumu tsawa chigures. Gyu chigures. Ani tawa la ya ani pena lokta tang tarta tang ani jigda la soba mambo ores. Ti nangi tso di ani jigda ani dangzin marigba di ani tsawan tartu badres.
To abandon suffering, gain freedom from suffering, one has to understand what is suffering. And moreover, one also then needs to understand in what circumstances or from what suffering arises, and go even deeper than that, which is to understand the root of suffering. So therefore, to abandon suffering, one has to know suffering and go deeper, understand from what it arises, and deeper still, what its very root is. And the root we can understand as being twofold, that being karma and afflictions. It's from karma and afflictions that our suffering arises. Within our afflictions, we will find views, some which will be afflicted views, and others which will be non-afflicted views. But the very, very root of our suffering is the view of the transitory collection, the ignorance that grasps at the self, grasp with the aggregates as being self-existent.
Tadi khandazres laundi. Ena tawa singindi nzimba sinagora nzimba diwu nyamba diresha samyak yorata diwu nyambi lotileya tawa sigores tawa lotida anichi pena ngala chalaji chona samsam rochi yabuji chona samsam lojora teleya dumba sigres dumba dan tawa ni chebaina tawa de hajang shukche yores ni 직 제고 삼빌로다 직 존나 삼빌로니 슈카리체스는 이 제긴 삼빌로디 슈체요레스 미만체 디기 온든 드로그레스 먼저 직 존나 삼빌로디 왕그 드랙 데스 카고요레스
디디 타마 디고마송
타와다 짐바다 타와스는 짐바레스 짐바다 dumba 직 존나 냠비 레와로 야저라 레와들은 dumba 세고라
and tawa shukchewere
tawa shukche그레스 Tinzam tami pena desha dan control sobale ani mariban jikta di shukche yores jikta di shukche yores dumba
So let's look what is meant by view. So we can understand it also through the word for grasp or apprehend. So view is when you believe something is like this. Now, something else that's we would be familiar with is if when we want something, whatever it may be, we have an aspiration for it. So here we desire something, we want something, but this aspiration, this desire for something is not nearly as strong as our views, the view that believes that things are like this and not like that. Views are very strong. If we compare afflictions such as attachment and anger, which cause us to engage in a number of actions, attachment and anger are not as strong as our views.
Tinzata jigda di tsawa di jigda pena mariwa dangzin sayati aning dichagores. The dunghar ki tsawa di dunghar ki tsawa di anzu chik thamandri ba yongya ki tsawa di pena magi ba yongya ta chigyora ta chik di ki tsawa di ani jigda nganzin sayati ngau nyambi lo chik pe ngau nyambi nga nga se jorata nga da kye se rang da shen yi bet loga sha chun so so slawan di pe ene chik rawan di yebi nga chik sambi lo joras o di ta ti tsawa chene ani thamantik ba ta chik ani dungala sobo chu di telteni yungyo sares.
Di chiktare daksin marik pare. There's a view then, believing that this is how things are, which is so much stronger than even our other afflictions, such as anger and attachment. What do we mean by view? So this can be expressed as the view of the transitory collection or ignorance of self-grasping. And this is the very root of our suffering. So this needs to be identified and cut, eliminated. So what is meant then by ignorance of self-grasping or the view of the transitory collection? It's the view that believes that the I or the self is independent from anything else. It's independent or separate from others. This view, this belief in an independent self is the view of the transitory collection and ignorance of self-grasping.
The dinza the tindri tawa di tindri tawa tawa jikta senanda ngau nyambi pita nga pi rang ngone ani chubatabu ge shending sambajora the dipam cherdo shen zin ngau nyambi samya jora di dipam cherdo sanji ki chue tembares dipanya ki chedo sanji ki chue tembares disonra dangomulo dugra.
This view, the view of the transitory collection, this ignorance of self-grasping, this ignorance that believes that the self exists in the way that it appears as being independent. So this ignorance that grasps at the self as existing independently, which is how it appears. This is the root of our suffering. And to abandon it, the Buddha taught the Dharma. So again, I'll repeat the verse that Geshe recited earlier. I prostrate to Gautama, who out of compassion taught the sacred Dharma that leads to the relinquishing of all views.
Tadinza, Tatawa the Pambi said the church tang church the Kandachik, church Kandares, Tawa the Pam Tuya church the Karare said. The Digogras ra. The Sanji Chitan Chumam Sonyores, Bena, any Ninji come down, Chanju Sam come down the soba. Ani Geshe Tsultrim song down, soba come down. The mambu should song yours. Ra. Hinayan Didi and Ben Ninji down, Chanju Sam Slaundi, Lord Koranki, Rigdodi, Dumba Jigres, Dumba.
Dunpa.
Yeah. Chik Chona Yam be lost.
Chongnam.
Sanji Kombo Toro Chena, Samjadam Dunga the Taro Chena,
Depa Gurkides. Depa Gurkin. Depa Yurkin.
Demba Marda. Ninji Sena, Ninji Benangan Chanju Sam Shi on the Dumba Nida Demba Reslara.
Dumpa Nidan Demba.
Kiamar. The Ninji di Dunga the Tan the Chimarong
Dempany, this is matter Dempany.
Dembani Mare. Ninji or Ninji Chimbo. Ninji Chimbo Karsam Gore. Samjan Tamja Dunga the Tana. Chimarong Yambilo di Ninji res. Ra. Di Tilo Digi Tilo di Dumba res. Dumba.
Then it goes.
Din Dumba in Zang Ninji Jigda di Musu Meva Sotu Mares. Kansan Jigda di Tawares. Tawa di Meva Songin di Tawa the Mus Pingawa English. Penan Tamu Tanganji in Bina, Sao di Meva Sotura. Sao Saja and the Tamud Meva Sotura. Dinan Shinkipe and the Gandaji Kogres. Ninji digi Tawa di Meva Sotu Mares. The Tawa di Meva Songi Ninji le Lagwachki. Shoji Kogres. That is Hangi Karson Bares.
When we hear then that the Buddha taught the sacred Dharma that leads to the relinquishing of all views, so from that quotation from Nagarjuna, the question will be, what is meant then by the Dharma that leads to the relinquishing of all views? Because the Buddha taught so many teachings within the Dharma or the teachings of the Buddha. There are so many teachings such as those on love, compassion, bodhicitta, ethical restraint, and so forth. But the majority of the different classifications of teachings are, for example, let's give one of compassion. Compassion in the Buddhist context means the sincere wish, may all sentient beings be freed from all forms of suffering. Every being without exception, may they be freed of suffering. So this is an aspiration. Compassion being an aspiration, it cannot eliminate the view of the transitory collection. It cannot eliminate the ignorance of self-grasping, because compassion being an aspiration is not contradictory to an ignorance of self-grasping or the view of the transitory collection. For one mind to overwhelm and eliminate another mind, it needs to be contradictory. You need, for example, cold to eliminate heat. You need something that is the opposite. So therefore, many of the Buddha's teachings, many of the Dharmas, cannot eliminate, cannot cut from the root this ignorance of self-grasping, because, for example, with compassion, it's an aspiration, and therefore cannot contradict a mind such as ignorance.
Chogri ki samba penan chagdo da densam la sobo da ani control la sobo di ani ninji ki ongi mewa so to gres chamba de ninji la sobo ongi control da chagdo da densam la sobo di mewa so to gres inaya ani tawa mariba jigda la sobo di Ninji chom thug mares, meva so thug mares. Tawa mariwa meva songing ki nimbo di ninjil lagachik. Sangi kita tombani tobi sherab sej. Kanji chu ani tombani sejik song yoros. O dirita chu ten sege ani tawa pambishid chu tembare se chu zo di ani sangi ki tombani sege chu shores.
For a virtuous mind to eradicate an unwholesome mind, there need to be opposites. So, for example, this essential mind of compassion, as well as love, when these are generated within one, love being the wish for all beings to experience only happiness, and compassion for them to experience all beings experience freedom from suffering, those are contrary to particular minds and therefore can eliminate them. For example, if one is sincerely loving and compassionate, anger will not arise, jealousy will not arise, nor will competitiveness. Why? Because love and compassion, when they are have sincerely arisen in a powerful way within one cannot be angry or jealous or competitiveness or discriminate. But compassion, though, is not contrary to the ignorance of self-grasping. Therefore, compassion cannot eradicate it. What is contrary to ignorance is wisdom. And to the particular ignorance of self-grasping or the view of the transitory collection, the wisdom that is contrary to that and therefore can eliminate it is the wisdom realizing emptiness. So therefore, the Buddha taught the Dharma, the teachings on emptiness, how to cultivate emptiness, because the wisdom that realizes emptiness is what can cut and eradicate the ignorance of self-grasping.
그들이 더 상기기 주 동반인 송샤야 디 당한주 고약이 채도 간주 고약이 채도 아니 간주 소놈 싸고야 소놈 싸야 촉사나 촉사 고고서레스 촉사야기 채도다 아니 냠탑이 숨진래야 닌지곰이야 장박곰이야 소박곰이야 짐바땅야 아니 즉 수수스름 송야로 소버디 아니 원이 아니 촉사야겠다 답이 약수 저래서 디 약부 낭바이나 아니 상기게 동반이 세송대야디 원이 nen가디 하고 두고여서래서 디 매바이나 라 베나 닌지 삼바 아니 지금 좀바 수름라 소바 베나 수름 매나다 깔카고 쉬어지러 왔다 수름다 땡긴들 소바 되게 매나 아니 산지기 동반이 송샤바디 아니 초매교를 정말도 오늘 내가 친구시 송구도 삼성 고아들하고요 사마리스
고아라기요 사마리
고하고요 사마리스
동반이긴 냠샤 갈고기야 말해
하고가 말했어.
When Buddha Shakyamuni was abiding in our world and teaching, he taught many teachings not to do with the view, but he did so in order to help beings accumulate vast stores of merit so as to later be able to come to understand and realize the view. So he taught sentient beings what is meant by love and how to cultivate it, what's meant by compassion, how to cultivate it, what's meant by patience, generosity, and ethical restraint, and how to cultivate it. Because to the extent that one cultivates these minds within oneself, one accumulates merit. To the extent that one becomes habituated to these minds and they become integrated within oneself, one accumulates vast stores of merit. And this is a very skillful technique. And therefore, Buddha Shakyamuni taught beings teachings such as love, compassion, ethics, and so forth, so as to accumulate merit and become wholesome, virtuous people. And this is the essential foundation to understand emptiness, to cultivate the correct view. Because in particular, without ethical restraint, oneself is, on the one hand, in grave danger because one is engaging in so much non-virtue. But moreover, it will not be possible to understand the view of emptiness if one isn't ethical, if one hasn't cultivated ethical restraint.
대다 간지 촉삭스라운데 촉삭야고 채운디 뭐여 내출라 뭐여 내출디 아니 하고 두고여서래스 뭐여 내출도 또 두고여래스라 뭐여 내출 또 봐이나 뭐여 내출 기타지 아니 차슈로들아 하고를 차슈 디 동반이들에스 뭐여 내출 그 탈투바로디 동반이들에스 아 뭐여 내출이야 신줄로도 슈딩인기 로타르투바로디 마리바데 당전들에스 딘자 뭐여 내출 탈투바 동반인도 로테다 당진님보디 갑데레스 아 딘자 산지기 추 베나간주 뭐여 내출라 신줄로도 슈딩인기 마리바 디왕기 아니 되차기에라 소바 셰단기에라 소바 콩로기야라 소바 안 딘디총 디왕기다 룽아기 자주 마롱아도서 레지 아니 레미기와사 아니 동아 용데야 타만디와 용데야디 무유네스로 왔으라 딘자다 디도비체도 산지기 무유 닐룩 동반인세디 템바레스
네, können Gott zurückkehren. Zugsache, der Kohle Chicksung so den kommen so. Because in der Zane Zugsache, den Art nur in der zu Hakokeres.
진짜 아니 베나 수rum 야고송 아니
Zugsache, ne.
속사니
Sag ne, den Egos,
Muy
den
bien,
Egos,
ajá.
den Egos. Chick. When one has this foundation of stable or vast stores of merit through engaging in particular ethical restraint, but also practices, companion practices such as generosity, love, compassion, and patience, then one can come to understand the wisdom, understand reality, how reality actually is. So one needs this foundation of merit. Then one can come to understand even the subtlest view, cultivate the wisdom realizing emptiness. And the reason this is to cultivate the wisdom realizing emptiness is of such paramount importance is it's only wisdom that is contrary to ignorance. It's only the wisdom realizing emptiness that is contrary to the ignorance of self-grasping. And it's from this ignorance of self-grasping that all our afflictions, our attachments, strong as well as subtle, our anger, our rage, our jealousy, our pride, they all arise from this one ignorance of self-grasping, this one root cause. So to the extent we have first developed a stable foundation of merit, we then can come to understand and integrate and eventually realize reality, cultivate the wisdom realizing emptiness, and thereby cut this very root cause of all our suffering. So this is why first the Buddha taught the accumulation of merit, and on independence on that, on the basis of that, one can cultivate the wisdom understanding reality.
데리다 다 베나 무여 네수 가르레스 라운디 무여 네수 무여 기탕 나싱인디 아니 칸다치요레스 라 남중 안성 나슬라운디 라운디 지 셴라야 자오니네 떼모공에 라왕기 쳐봤다고치 라 라왕기 쳐봤다고치 디 로레샤 아니 다디 아니 베나 손접다 마선나 아니 손접스나 손바 디손 베나 고송아
고송
난저 라왕디 여봤다비 나텔이야 손접 치온디 아니 지금 나라 독자지라 손 지금 나라 야구 치손 삼삼 줘라다 지금 나도 피길이야 믹스기 라왕디 여봤다고 지금 좀바지 여러왔어 디 나한테 라왕디 여메디 시원디 다 산지기 나세기 라왕기 쳐바치 다 여마리스 나 라왕기 쳐바치 여마리 소야 디기 아니 가르송구 여비 내가 디 하고와이나 아니 나 냠비기 베 아니 나 라왕 쳐바데비 로직이 여러왔어 디 야세자담바 라간로고사레스
디 야세자담바
라스는 매버차고사레스 아 슈크촌로야 자원이는 매버차야 딘디 연구여사레스 디 매버차와이나 디 슈크촌로와이나 나는 누구도 삼는 콘로 사이저라 아니 나를 야부치도 삼는 되차 기해줘라 디 어디야 연구여서 말이스
Previous segment I spoke about reality, the need to come to understand reality. So what is meant by reality? We usually then will look to the self or the I. How does the I exist in reality? So when we look at how we think we exist, We all believe we exist to be independent, that we have freedom. So we think we have freedom, free will, free choice. We believe that we are independent. This is how our I appears to our mind. So therefore, we believe that the I or the self is independent or free. And this then is something we want to protect. For example, if someone praises you, a sense of I becomes very apparent. Even more so when someone criticizes you. We experience it as this independence I is now being criticized, and we need to protect it. Protecting it leads to a response of anger. Or if someone praises us, we experience now this independence I as being praised. Pride arises. So from this grasping at the I as existing in a particular way, as independent, if we're criticized, anger can come. Or maybe feeling small, feeling weak. Or if someone praises us, from this I that we grasp at, then pride arises. But Buddha Shakyamuni taught that there is no independent I. This does not exist. There is no independent I. And to the extent that we come to recognize this, and first intellectually, but particularly integrate that, our self-grasping, our grasping at the I as existing in the way that it appears as independent will weaken. Because we're coming to recognize that whilst the I appears to exist independently, it does not. This appearance is not in accordance with reality. To the extent that we realize that this appearance is not in accordance with reality, we won't be so deceived by it. And therefore, not being so deceived by it, anger, pride, jealousy, and so forth, they will arise far less frequently and with far less strength and far less duration. And as we become ever more habituated to recognizing the I does not exist independently, these afflictions will no longer arise.
Tirda di tolaya ra samlo shukchimbu stantuwaina. Tendeng anzo gyodu wasare semra. Ta dela samlo che madanche ra nga round trup matru nga trupsu tolaya samlo che madane. Ani lega shamba kharche devaina ya nganzin sedi shukchimbu di meva sotu yo mares. The dim mevasum matu savijela anin dacha dang kondro di ko guyo enza debu di ne yong badauchi chagyo sares ro
Dodun labda dak mepa ki kola samlo matang na
matama
gyusiki mare.
nganzin dosig mares.
If one does not think about this well, what I'm presenting here, and one continues as one has been throughout this in many lives, believing that the self exists in the way that it appears, then we will continue as before, believing that the self, grasping at the self, believing at the self to exist independently. And we will not be able to have a seriously eradicate, or completely rather eradicate our afflictions. Anger, attachment, etc., will continue to arise. And why so? Their cause, this ignorance, is still there. As long as the cause is there, the result will follow. No surprise. So as long as our ignorance of self-grasping remains untouched, it will continue to produce its results: anger, attachment, pride, and jealousy.
Danganzo di sososo la nyamnyong roji lebaina. Teni samlo tanya la pendo yungaras. Pende nyamnyong yakshu di kangan chebi kabdula ya. Soso ta kangan shuchembu chebi kabdula. Tezchik ane ngad kandaji yome, ngad kawa yome. Samlo tez tangtuba na. Geshe Tsultrim pengyo sares. Tadi manzo shu magiba yongya jora kabkala. Ni makunge pe khala sanya madronge eni musuto na pe kondro sadenge ro magawa ki ding tinji tak ganzo kenza din yon yoros di kaptula 소소 아니 바 대체 우리무 지카시 땅으로 아니 대체네 아니 다 나기부문도 삼야 나디 가왈 간들에서 가왈도 기부 매와 가운데로 다 비기 소소를 여비겠다 아니 라바니 깜바니고 아니 빡빠샤 루고 탁 다딘디요라다 아두수 두수 전에다 마킹ing 나드 가요메 파스 직성로지 nembu 스타마이나 캐난 단지 초슈 잡어디 야시야다 말라 그래스 드니 고츠는 다 냠뇽치 아 라기요사레스 로 원에 산지 추디 야시야다 얌셈부지 연구요사레다 로 빼는 공부도 좋다고 아니 지 레벤 파발랐다고 완전다와 잡아 아니 제로무치 야오충가발로 소바 다 산지게 베기 똥번이 손샤고 디 하고는다 쉬우지게 베 아니 산지래 믹스기 대바총으로서 믹스기 대바기 버라다 오늘 다 산지에서 다 쉬우지래서다 손야 뒤에 산지기 추 똥번이 세야디 된다다 하고니 되니 시니다 나다 만다바기 대바치기여로서
For me to briefly present this is quite easy. For you to just hear, it's also quite easy. But for it really to have an impact, for it to have meaning in your life, you need to take the teachings and apply them to your own lived experience. Then the teachings have benefits. So think of times, or when next you have an experience when your problems are overwhelming, where you're experiencing intense suffering, or the difficulties are pouring down on you. Times like this, I really encourage you to step back, sit down, and look within, and ask yourself, I can feel so much suffering. Who is suffering? Where is this I, this self, that is in such pain right now? So this is really beneficial at times when your problems are overwhelming you. You can't sleep, you've lost your appetite, and the smallest thing leads you to getting enraged. Sit quietly, look within, and ask yourself, who is experiencing this pain? And then you look in your various body parts, you look in your hands, you look in your legs, you look in the flesh beneath the skin, the liquids, you look for this I that is in so much pain. You go through this meditation then, and I can promise you, your suffering will weaken. For 100% sure it will work. And in fact, so many great masters of the past who have taken these teachings, understood them well, and whilst understanding them, integrated them, giving rise to transformative realization. When that came about, such joy arose in their mind, and they often express this to their students or in verse. Masters like Nagarjuna, Aryadeva, Chandakirti, Lama Tsongkhapa, they all did this through this tremendous joy arising within themselves because of the peace that they had attained through realizing these teachings on emptiness. With this too, great faith and appreciation in the Buddha and in the Buddha's teachings arose because they had experienced the benefit of his teachings. So I encourage you to do this next time your problems appear overwhelming.
Terda dangwane sanji chu karsong yoba chu digi ani nyumu dinang chik tawa tozo kandas pang yoba kandajin pang tu yoba ngone gi ta chik ani an zambali nala ya ta nyamnyo yonge shingin chik gombulu do ros
Shinin chik.
shi ngone hakongin mitti nangi ta chashi chik gombulu do ros.
Whatever the Buddha taught was taught so that we could gain freedom from suffering, weaken and eliminate our afflictions. And amongst all the remarkable beings that have existed in this world, amongst the foremost would be Arya Nagarjuna.
대전 고물루기 가르송 레슬라운딩 고물루기 타마 돔 잡스나 하고라 돔 잡원디 캐랑기 아니 나세디 라왕기 트버치 아니 삼라탄사베 제라 nganzin kigres nganzin yobayna kenana chagdan yungres tiwangi kenang luda ngaki chawadugja ligres tiwangi kenana dunga yonya di guncheg mares gaja gadam resonra dara
Nagarjuna taught that through initially grasping at an I or self as being free, as being independent, from this comes the grasping at things as being mine and all our afflictions. And from our afflictions such as attachment come behavior, physical and verbal, that leads to suffering. So Nagarjuna, this great master, clearly laid out this sequence.
nyambi logic yungyores now nyambi lodige lodelaya ngadi kandrach ani nangdo ra di now nanshingi ngadi ndugmundu seju chiadira gyunding seju chiadi da gom senandra yakshu di tin sares ra soso rani seju yabu chetubaina ani 텔 템비게 샘컴 들르르 차고 와서레스 아니 나르지 뇽와 뇌차 뇽와 셰당 뇽와 아니 로 디디 가지 뇽뇽 차와이나 아니 지 참만 다지 찍었다 투게 로디 망레야 아니 지 제위 삼바디야 망레야 닌지라 소보 참발라 소보 로디 망레야 딜레온디 아니 샘디 차냠보 샘감 흘러 차야 샘 흘러 차와이나 텔레템비 lun컴 데 흘러 차야 딘지 용거서레스로 간지 소수 메세나와 약시디 소수 제바치야 소수 간다지 예메 돌아야 삼문다야디 곰 약시디 다 간지 곰불루드군 돌드나 소수 간다지 예메디 제바치야 송고도 산지게 디송고도 아스라 소소 라완드 메나 아니 소소 라완 트버직 메나 아니 미션이야 나 라완 고스 랍데나 뇨그다라 와스라 안디리도즈레도
Yeah, I will encourage you to engage in these meditations as I do too. What we need to do is sit quietly and look, how does my I appear to me? So we're looking for our own sense of self, our own sense of I, to see how it appears. To the extent that we can understand that, recognize the I appearing as if it is independent, as if it has freedom, we then investigate to see if it exists in this way or not. Is this appearance in accordance or in harmony with reality or not? And amongst all the many meditations that one can do and the many essential meditations, this is supreme. This is the most important. When one gains some familiarity with this meditation, the outcome that easily follows, to the extent that one's recognizing the self does not exist in the way that it appears, one's mind relaxes, becomes vast and spacious. When one's mind is relaxed and spacious, you know from your own experience, afflictions like anger and attachment rise with much more difficulty. But when one's mind is relaxed and spacious due to cultivating wisdom, then even when encountering adverse conditions that would usually set us off, anger, pride, jealousy, competitiveness, and so forth, do not arise so easily. The second great benefit from this meditation, because the benefit doesn't merely stop at one becomes more relaxed, but because this relaxation comes from cultivating wisdom, One's recognizing that I do not exist in the way that I appear. One's heart now opens to others. And the love and compassion within you, those imprints for love and compassion within you, much more easily arise. So from this open spaciousness, love and compassion readily arises within you. So I encourage you to engage in this meditation. Look for one's sense. Firstly, you look for one's own sense of self, not that of others. How do I appear to my mind? This self that appears to be free or independent. And then investigate, does it exist in this way or not?
준들 지와요는 가시 땅으로 지서 아니 종들 치고 그랬더니 그래.
So if you want some questions, then if you have some questions, then now's the good time to ask.
If I don't exist, what does exist?
Na mepa yina, kari yopa yina.
nga ramang mebares la madam nga mebares la go maras tingi cheba chigo dos
The I does not exist in the way that it appears, or to express it differently, the I does not exist independently, or the I doesn't exist independently. That does not mean the I doesn't exist. The I that does not exist is an independent I, but that doesn't mean the I does not exist.
di be mambu song yores pena jawa tsunga ba phela phevni ta phela yan chone the sanji temba shu ji ki tinang ros nang di sanji chom den di chud beta ani changma shu chi konor the de yo ko logba len de yo di ani the mi mambu ko norju kogora ko logba kogora pena dinza ani jawa tsunga ba ge tomba ni silawndi kaya mebajila koguyo ba na ani chomundos kaya mebajila koguyo mares tomba seadi tonya di rawangi tomba la ya rawangi tomba tela ya kogores ani yotsul di rawangi tombi chutdos mingi taksam ton yoba tinza nga pena nga kerans lawndi nganzu yoros yoba di susu hakograda ngalaya kapkala dewa yungu yore ngi hako nga dunga yungu ngi hakogora ina nga yotsul di yotang jor the yotsul di hamako che yotsul di rawangi yo samsam roch shen la tyogo me samsam lo di kyenche dos kyenche de yotsul hamako ni yotsul hako yotsul yotsul hamako ni manzo chugdo gores
In the time of Jeremshe Lama Tsongkhapa, there were many mistaken views in Tibet. There are many people who misunderstood Buddha Shakyamuni's teachings, in particular those on the view. The wisdom realizing emptiness that wisdom does not realize that phenomena do not exist. The wisdom or emptiness does not equate to non-existence. What the wisdom realizing emptiness realizes is that not that phenomena do not exist at all, but rather that phenomena are empty of inherent existence or self-existence. I'm using synonyms, or empty of existing by way of its own nature, or empty of existing independently. Existing in that way, independently or with freedom, the self or phenomena do not exist in this way. They are empty of existing in this way. That is what the wisdom realizing emptiness realizes. So this is how the self does not exist. But the self is merely labeled by mind onto the body and mind. So the self does not exist in the way that it appears to us. But that doesn't mean it's non-existent. It exists merely labeled by mind. So sometimes I'm happy, sometimes less happy. But this I that is experiencing, or the self that is experiencing happy or very happy or not so happy, this I is not independent of others. It does not, that's that kind of an I existing in that way does not exist. Only an I or a self that is merely labeled. And the next question?
Okay. If the I is what we call as a human self and nothingness is its own thing, is there a way for allowing us as our human mind to be able to overcome that? Because I understand that suffering will arise, or as you mentioned, sometimes you're happy and sometimes you're less happy.
I didn't get the question so well.
How does oneself be able to overcome this, or is this a human existence that we need to live till the day we die?
How do we overcome this human existence that we need to
That
live through? The suffering.
Because
Okay.
wisdom has so much, or is wisdom endless?
I don't know.
Oh, sorry, is wisdom endless, like forever?
Okay.
Because you mentioned about canceling each other out.
Okay. Deni ne juas helpo kona. Deni ngoma kerengi ngaso sherap dan marikpa geldare. Deni deni sherap ki ngaso marikpa bet me peseto gide cheto gides. Deni di takpa dan dropo sekirepe te chikne shenla ngaso takpa yerbe. Ne chikde la maso. Yine ngaso sherap ki Candice Dugnel te chigne shenla sekirebe.
Teres Chewayabudos in the Chewan and Chewachabudos. Chewayabudu Chewachabudos.
It's a great question. It's a complicated question.
Tanganzu Dunghal Sidiajora, Dunghal love the Ajora, Dunghal la Dungha Tara Mambuyores. Dungha Rakpa Pena Shogi Shogjatoya Mantravana, Togonaya Hasova. This is Onsum Tondia, Dungares. The Yanko Kabdula never saw to Yapena, Togonaya and Gonaya so Dungadi, Dungarabatres. The young any Pena Soa Dungar. Ani chik sem ki wu me dungar di lu dungar li kal khandas the deni yang ja dungar chashu di khatse gorsla di nanzo kewa tang shiala ya rawa me ba chindas rawa me ba chi rawa me bi thoni nanzo shia gi deba me na ya shigoya nanzo tiri shia gi deba me na ya shidro ya so ba rawa me ni shia jdos the dunga trashu there is.
First, let's look at suffering. Suffering, we need to recognize, especially just to first say as an aside, the English word suffering is not ideal, but there isn't a better one. So suffering, we need to understand as having many layers of complexity or subtlety. Usually what comes to mind when we think about suffering is physical suffering. When you wake up in the morning, you're hungry, you eat, less suffering. You have a headache, take some medicine, less suffering. This is usually what we think. A subtler level, a level which hurts more deeply, is mental suffering. This of the two, physical and mental, It's mental suffering that causes the deepest pain. So that's then a suffering level. But there are many a deeper level of subtlety. But there are many levels of subtlety for suffering. But at the very subtlest is birth and death. In particular, not the merely birth and death, but that we have no freedom, no control, no say in our birth and our death. It's something that in a sense happens to us. If we want to die, if we're very ill, we have to endure. If we don't want to die now, but we do, we can't do anything about it. So this lack of freedom, this lack of control of our birth and death is the subtlest level of suffering.
그래 디 tinza nganzu kewa la ya raum me bati ani share raum me bati pena nganzu mi lule ya tondru lule ya la sobati raum me bati kari chigor sedi ani nyumungi wangi nganzu nyumungi wangi kewa lengo ya nyumungi wangi shigoya de chagores ta nyumung meba chawaina nganzu kewa dan shela raung togu yores inaya diko dia gyuda gela teni jongo gores takpa mares re sherab ku toni ani nyumungi wangi shimugowa nyumungi wangi ke mugowegi rawan di sherab ku toni chuntu gores ta
Because it may sound a little strange to say that the subtlest form of suffering is uncontrolled birth and death. But we have no choice about whether we were born here or even as a human and not as an animal. It's something that in a sense happens to us. So this is how to understand the lack of freedom of our birth and death. But birth and death, whilst we have no freedom over it, it is not causeless. It comes about primarily due to our afflictions. So due to our afflictions that we take rebirth, it's due to our afflictions that we die. Therefore, when we have gained freedom from our afflictions, when they have been severed at the very root, those afflictions which lead to uncontrolled birth and death, those causes don't exist. Therefore, no uncontrolled birth and death will occur. Birth and death will continue and will continue due to causes, but not the cause of the afflictions, because they've been eradicated. Now the cause is wisdom, because wisdom is now so dominant that the afflictions have ceased. The root has been severed. Wisdom then will lead to rebirth, but it'll be controlled. So in that case, one has now control over birth and death. So that is very different from the situation we find ourselves in now. It's due to the power of our afflictions. We take rebirth and we die, something we have no control over. But when wisdom has been developed sufficiently that the afflictions are severed, it's due to wisdom we have control. We can take rebirth and we'll have control over rebirth and death.
당간주 뉴무 빵바이나 르디 샤락 르고고요 말이스 이 르셀 소바 아니지 간지 롱 르라 소바 틴 롱세는 되겠다 간지 다이 르라 소바 이 르라 소바 아니 르디 초고레스 간지 아니 지 토바맹이 벤잔선 나신기 토바메스나 벤 단단간주 르디 토토고 인디기 토바메비 벤단간주 셈디 단단디네바 아니 벤나 장수 칼런트와 이나제 실로라 셈람산 조고다 디난신 르데 토바메비 르지 주에 시고레스라 다 괜찮으라고 토고다 이네 대 교대 깨는 데는 총화인자 딱 봐서야기 당연히 자기 말했어.
This rebirth as a human being, we took without freedom or control. It happened due to the power of our afflictions, and we took rebirth due to our parents' the sperm fertilizing the egg. But when the afflictions have been eliminated, this being whose wisdom is so powerful, they do not need to take rebirth like that. We have no choice, but they give rise to a mental body. And a mental body is able to move without obstruction. We have many obstructions. The computer obstructs the movement of my hand, but a mental body can move wherever the mind takes it. So such a being with such powerful wisdom has freedom. But this state of this freedom, though, we should understand as being caused, or the rebirth rather, the rebirth as being caused. It's not something permanent or causeless. It is caused, but the cause is now no longer the afflictions, but wisdom.
Tena di nganzu koya kabures. Nganzu pena ngana do ina lo nishu sak semna la ya di kande toba yes. Lo nishu la ngal semna toba yes. Ne da ji sanji gita mese gora ra lo ngap chungak sam ngap shi chi chasa. Ti ba bejetan deva inza. Ani sanji gi son la ya do da ngak 추즈니어레 다 산지가 손 창성 로질이야 직된 데스 하고온디 원이 인사를 삼성 더버딩가 원이 더버디 메조 차선스 그게 딱
도플체소
더버 최선하다 똑다 요마르라 니 세미 똑서도 라고 말이냐 원이 인사를 삼성기 샘난다 원이 다디 원이 인사를 삼성기 로지 레기도 왔어 다지 딘지 다 마장 바이나 아니 성 주름부 마당 바이나 네술도수 수수기 켈린시토야 카고요레스.
This is something difficult to understand, and understand not just in the way of understanding the words, or this is the Buddha's presentation, but understand in the way that one truly knows that this is how it works. This is difficult. And talking from my own experience, I've had a doubt about this for more than 20 years. And now I'm 53 years old. I've studied so many sutras and tantras, and I've finally come to the point that I have certainty that it works like this. So this is my own understanding. I can't say I've realized this, but I do have certainty that what the Buddha has taught in the sutras and tantras on this point is how it really is. But I want to say to you, it took me a really long time and tremendous amount of effort to get here. So if to you it arises in your mind as, well, maybe, but I'm not so sure, this is okay, because I also had a doubt for a very long time.
So we recite the dedication prayers and the little booklet. Oh, Lamrim prayer, of course, sorry. Sorry. Yeah, I know. It's in the yellow book, page 339. Promote two types of merits as fast as space that I've amassed from working with effort at this practice for a great length of time. May I become the chief leading Buddha for all those whose minds wisdom eyes blinded by ignorance. Even if I do not reach this state, may I be held in your loving compassion for all lives, Manjushri. May I find the best to complete greater paths of the teachings, and may I please all the Buddhas by my practice. Using skillful means drawn by the strong force of compassion, may I clear the darkness from the minds of all beings. With the points of the path as I have discerned them, may I uphold Buddha's teachings for a very long time. With my heart going out with great compassion, in whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread, or once spread have declined, may I reveal this treasure of happiness and aid. May the minds of those who wish for liberation be granted bounteous peace, and the Buddha's deeds be nourished for a long time, by even this greater path to enlightenment completed, due to the wondrous virtuous conduct of the Buddhas and their sons. May all human and non-human beings who eliminate adversity and create conducive conditions for practicing the excellent paths never be parted in any of their lives in the purest path praised by the Buddhas. Whenever someone makes an effort to act in accordance with the tenfold Mahayana virtuous practices, may they always be assisted by the mighty ones, and may oceans of prosperity spread everywhere.